Hello everyone, so welcome to this LWC learning series. In this video we are going to see LWC Decorators, and this is the only video you ever need to watch on LWC Decorators. That's my guarantee. If you want to check the other videos in LWC, you can go ahead and check my playlist where I'm posting regular video on LWC with quite detailed example. So without any further ado, let's begin the lecture. So how many types of decorators we have in LWC? We have the track decorators. It is a reactive property and not needed now in most cases after winter 21st release. So we'll see in which cases this track property is still being used, and we'll see the demo of it. We'll create LWC component and we'll see the examples. The second property is the API property, right? The API decorator. It is a public property and it exposes property or method to parent component, right? We'll see the example of this one as well. The third one is the @wire decorator or wire service. This is used for data fetching reactively from Apex or LDS. So we are going to see the examples of this all the decorators in a much more detailed way. The first one is the @track decorator in LWC. So what is the basic definition of it? This decorator is used to make complex object array properties reactive. But wait a minute, what is a reactive property? Any property that when updated automatically re-render the UI component. So we'll see with the example what it means. So let's say we have created an LWC component, and don't worry, we are going to build this LWC component in our developer edition. But just for the high level, let's say there is a property which is called as a person, right? And this is an object. It contains a name property which is John, and age is equal to 25, and we have decorated it with the help of @track property, right? So whenever we are decorating the property with decorator, we have to add it into the import as well. Since we are using track, we need to add track here as well, right? And suppose if with the help of some method the person dot age is getting changed to 30, right? So we want this to be visible on the UI component as well, and I have shown the UI component here. So we have the John age is 25. This is built in HTML. We'll see it in a bit. And this is a button. So when we click on this button, this method gets called out and the age will be updated to 30, right? But will the first line will get updated when we click the button? If the property is not reactive, it will not update this 25. But if the property is reactive, it will update the age, right? So once we update it to 30, we have to see like, is it updating or not? But since we have used track property here, it will update, but we'll see this scenario as well where it is not updating, right? So let's demo it. There's too much of theory. I don't like too much of theory. We'll go to demo directly. So in our last video, I have shown you how to create a lightning web component. For this, we will create another lightning web component, and this time we'll give it name as track decorator. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we need to create a property. Let's call it person, give it name as John, and age as 25, right? Let's create a method as well, update age this dot person. So I'm updating the name at age to 30, right? So let's go ahead and create the HTML component. Here I'll write it as write it inside the lightning card. Dot name is person dot age, and the other is we are going to create lightning button. We'll give it label as update age to 30. On click handler, here we'll give update age right? So this is our code. Let's see what we have done, right? So we have created a person with name and age attribute. Name is John and age is 25, right? And then we have created a method which will get called when we click this button, right? Because on the on click we have the update age. So when we click the button, it will call out this method and update the age. But in this case, let's see whether it is getting updated on the UI or not. So if I go to this meta file, we need to expose it to our home page that we have created, to the app page. Okay, now if I go to Salesforce, I need to add that component in the page which we created, which is the LWC learning. I'll go to edit page now. Okay, let's search for our component, which is the track decorator. Okay, we are not able to see that track decorator here. See if it is deployed. We have, okay, the value was wrong. We have track decorator. We can see our component here. Let's add it to the page layout. Click on save now. Okay, let's go back. Okay, this is our component, so don't go by the looks of it. But the question is, when we click on this button, what do you think will happen? Will this age will get updated to 30? Because we are updating, when we click on that button, it is calling this method and it is updating the age of the person which we have. So will this update on the UI as well? Let's see that. I'm clicking this button, but this age is not getting updated, right? On the HTML file, if you see, we have person.name and person.age, right? So person is our property and age is inside that property we have, right? So it is still showing as 25 even though it is getting updated to 30. And the reason why it is not happening, because it is not currently a reactive property, right? So it is not re-rendering the UI component again when the value of this person is getting changed. So that's when we use the track property, right? So now if I decorate it with the track decorator, right? And since we are using track decorator, we need to add it on the import as well, right? Okay, now if I save it and deploy it, now this person became the reactive property because we have used track here, right? Okay, it is now deployed. And if I go again to Salesforce, refresh the page, and now when we click on this, you can see the age is getting updated here. And the reason why, now it becomes the reactive property because we have used the track decorator here. And now the person will gets updated and it will re-render the UI component. That's why you are seeing the latest age here, right? So this is what a reactive property is, and this is how you can use the track, right? And there are few things which you need to remember. When to use, the question is when to use track decorator. The first thing is not needed for primitive data types, which are string, number and boolean, right? If you have these data types as the property, you don't need to use track decorator because they are by default reactive. In previous versions, like before winter 21 release, developers has to write track property to make it reactive. But now in LWC, these are by default reactive. And what does it means? Let's say you have a property, let's say string name. Let's give it any string here, test string. This is a string, right? And in the code, at any place you are updating the value of this string, right? Let's say you are updating the value to XYZ, right? So this time, even though you are not using the track property, whenever this string name value is getting updated, it will re-render the UI component and you'll see the latest data because this string is by default reactive. But this is not the case of person. We'll see why. So string is by default reactive. What else is by default reactive is number. Let's say 23, and let's say you have updated it to 45. So this number is also by default reactive. You don't need to write at the rate track property here, but earlier developer has to write it. Before developer has to write it, but now after winter 21 release this is not needed in case of string, number or boolean values, right? So I'll remove these. Okay, so first point is clear. The other point is not needed for direct reassignment of object. What does it mean to have the direct reassignment of the object, right? So this is the tricky one, and the direct reassignment means if you have a property, right, and you are directly changing the value by reassigning it. So currently in this case, in this example, you are not directly reassigning this person, right? You are only changing the age property of that object, not the complete person, right? So that's why track is needed. But if in case of doing like this, I am commenting that out. If you do it like this dot person is equal to, and now you are updating it to, let's say, Aman and age to 30, right? And let's not use the track property. I'm not using track property here. I'm removing it from import as well. Okay. And now let's deploy it. So in this case, we are directly reassigning this whole object, right, with the value, not only just the age. We are reassigning the everything, right? So in this case, what do you think when we click on this update age to 30, will it update on the first line or not? If I click on this one, will this line will get updated or not? Before, when we are only updating age in our first example, it was not updating, right, because we did not use track. But in this case it will update. Why? Because we are directly reassigning the object. So in case of directly reassigning the object, which is this person, you don't need to write track. But if you are if you need to change some attribute of that object, like the first one, we are changing the age to 30, in this case track is required. In this case track is required to re-render the component. In the other case, track is not required because we are directly reassigning the complete object. Correct? This one is clear. So let's go back to our presentation. The second point is clear now, not needed for direct reassignment of objects. The third point is needed if you modify nested properties inside an object without reassigning it, which was our first example, right? In our first example, we are changing the nested property. This age is what? Nested property of this object. We are updating this age only, nested property. So in this case, track is required. Right? So this is our first example, which is the third point here, right? So let's see some of the examples when to use track and when not to use track. So the first one is, we'll see when to use track, right? Okay, array. So this items is a list of string, right? Array of string, right? And you are adding a new items on it, like grape is a new string which we are adding to this array. So in this case, it is the track properties required to re-render the component, right? The reason is because we are not directly reassigning items array, right? We are adding the value. So that's why track is needed. The other example is the one which we have seen. We have the person and we are updating the nested property of it, which is the age. So in this case, track is required to re-render the component. When not to use, string, number, boolean, we have seen like name, age is true. These are string number variables. In this case, we don't need to write @track to make this property reactive, because it is now by default reactive after winter 21 release. And also we don't need to use in case of reassignment. So person is an object and we are reassigning with this method. Whenever this method is getting called, we are reassigning this person to this value, the complete person we are reassigning. So track is not required. Even for the case of array, if we are directly reassigning the complete array, we don't need to write the track property because that is by default reactive. So I hope this is clear now. Okay, and just like my last video, I'll add all my source code into the description, so you can check those code as well from there. Let's move on to the API property. So the API decorator used to expose properties and method of a child component to its parent component. And in this API, you need to remember that data flow from parent to child. What do you mean by this? We'll see with the help of example, right? Okay, so now we'll see this demo. So before starting the demo, I'll tell you what I'm doing as part of this demo. So we would be having a child LWC component, and in the child LWC component, we have a property called as name, right? And now what we will do, we have a parent LWC component as well. What we will do is we will change the name property in the child by passing value from parent. So the property is in the child component, but we'll pass this value of this property from the parent component. So this is what we are going to do as part of this demo, right? So let's jump into it. Okay, so for this example, we are again going to create a new LWC component. Create new LWC component. Let's give it name as API decorator parent. Okay, and the other one as API decorator child. API decorator child. Okay, so I'll add a text here so that you can remember which file I am working as. Like if it is a child component, I'll add while editing the video, I'll add the child component here so that you know I'm working on the child component. And for parent, I'll add a parent text here so that you'll know that I'm working on the parent component. Okay, so now we are on the child component. So as I mentioned, we will have the property in the child component. So we'll give the property as my name. Okay, I want this my name to be updated from parent component. So but before that, I'll add the HTML component as well. So here I'll give what is my name, Okay, so whatever is the value of my name will be visible to the on the UI, right? Now we'll go to the parent component. Okay, and we want to update the child component property, which is the my name, from the parent component. So first I have to include the child component into the parent. So how we can do it? So we have to write the kebab case whenever we are adding a child component inside parent. So the name of our component is what? Let's see. The name of our child component is API decorator child, which is in camel case. So we have to write it like C hyphen, because it is a child component, the first word API, then we have D as capital, we need to give a hyphen, and then we have to start the other word decorator, and then P child is capital, C is capital, then we have to write the child. So in this way we have to add the child component. So because we have the name of the child LWC component in kebab case, in camel case, but whenever we are adding it into the parent component, we have to use the kebab case. We have to add hyphen, and then we have to write the word, right? So in this way we need to write, and same goes for the property of the child component, right? So let's see first. To access the property of child component, which is my name, because we are going to pass this my name value from parent. So how we can do it? We need to add @API property, API decorator, because if we don't write @API, parent component won't able to set the value of this property. So we need to write API in order to expose this property to the parent component, right? Okay, so now how to update the value of this property which is in child component from the parent? We have to add it as an attribute here. So how we need to write? We have to, again, we have the property name here in kebab case, sorry, property name in camel case. We have to change it to kebab case whenever we write we are setting value from parent. So we have to give it name like my hyphen name. Why? Because in name n is capital, so for that we need to add a hyphen here, right? And let's set the value of it to something else. So by default Aman is the value, but this is value, let's give it name from parent, right? Okay, so now what we have done, we have added child component in the parent, and we have set the value of my name attribute which is in the child component from the parent, right? So if I we need to expose this into the page, we'll add it in the page and see how it is working. So we'll give it as true, we'll set the target as liking app page. Okay, first we need to deploy child component, because if I deploy parent component, it will say that this component is not there in the system. So first we need to deploy the child component. And if you see that I did not add anything on the child component in the exposed, right? Because the main thing which we will be adding on the page is the parent component, right? Because it contains child component. So we don't need to write the expose it into the app page, right? Parent have the control. We only need to add this on the parent level, right? Not on the child level. So we can deploy it as it is. Okay, now we will deploy it to the deploy the parent. Okay, now if I go to the page, I need to add that into the application page that we have here. Go to edit page, API decorator parent. We only need to add parent component because child is inside this parent, so it will be visible here as well. Click on save, go back. Okay, so you can see what is my name, and you are seeing name from parent. This name from parent is coming from where? If I go to this parent component, we can see that the my name value, we are setting it from parent, right? And it is now visible on the child component. But you will now ask, like, we have the value Aman in the child component, why it is not showing as Aman? Because Aman is the default value which we have set, default value. So in case we are not passing any value from parent, let's say we are not passing any value from parent for this my name attribute, it will show the default value only on the page, which is the Aman, right? If I refresh it, it will only showing as Aman, which is the default value in the child component. But as soon as I passed any value which is my name, I am updating it from parent, it will override the default value which we have on the child, which is Aman. So that's why when we are passing the value, it will override this Aman value. So this is clear now. Now let's go back to our demo. So now we have seen, let's revise it. We have seen we have a property called name, my name in our case, in child component. We have passed value from parent to this one, and the new value is visible on the page, right? So this is how API a decorator we can use to pass value from parent to child. Okay, let's go to demo number 2. So the first demo we have seen, so on the definition we have seen like it exposes properties as well as method. So property one we have seen in demo 1, and now we'll see the method one. So in demo 2 again we have a child component, and in this child component we'll have one method, so which will be show alert, right? And we are going to call this method which is in the child component from the parent LWC component. We will call the show alert method in child component from parent, right? So let's see how we can achieve this one. We'll go to VS Code again. Okay, so in this one I'm on the child component, and I'll create another method called as API show alert, right? So alert is JavaScript method which I'm calling to fire the alert. Okay, so just remember that I'm in the child component. In the child component I have added this method, right? I'll deploy it. So now we will call this method show alert from the parent component, and we have to write @API so that parent can have access to this method. We'll go to parent again, and now this time we need to call this one, right? So for calling this one we have to write, let's write a lightning button, which when we press that one it will call that method, right? So we'll give the label as call child method, and on click handler would be, let's give it name as handle click, right? And this handle click we need to define in the parent's JavaScript file. So this is the parent JavaScript file. Okay, so how to call this one? We need to write the handle click method name first, and now from here we need to call the method of the child. So for that one we need to first use get template dot query selector. So you might have seen this query selector when in JavaScript it was document dot query selector. So it will select the tag. So we need to, inside of it we need to write the tag which we want to select. So if I go to parent component, what is the tag that we have for the child component? This one is the tag of the child component. We need to write this. So what query selector will do, it will select the first tag which is matching to this one, and then we need to write the method of which we have on the child component, which is show alert. So now what we are doing is we are selecting the child component, and we are adding dot and the method of child component. So this method is on child component, but we are calling from the parent. So that's how we can achieve this call out. Yeah, it is deployed. Now let's refresh the page. Okay, call child method. So this button is actually on the parent component which we have written, right? And when we click this method, it will call the method of child component, and it will show the error which we will get on the UI. If I click on this, I'm getting an error, and it is saying hello from the child component, right? Because this is what we have set on the child component. If I go to child.js, on the alert we have this method. So we are calling the method from the parent to the child. So now we have seen like how we can leverage the API decorator to set property of the child component, or to call method of the child component. Okay, now move on to the wire decorator. Let's see the definition of it. Wire decorator used to fetch data from Salesforce using Apex method and LDS, right? So remember that Apex method and LDS, right? So we'll see how we can use wire to call Apex method and how we can leverage LDS with the wire service, right? So there are two things. First, how to use wire decorator. So the first scenario is call Apex class to fetch record. So this is the Apex method where we are using the wire service. So in this example, you can see, we'll see the syntax, what syntax we need to use and what we are doing, right? So you can see the first scenario that we have, call Apex class to fetch record without any parameters. So we are not passing any parameters to Apex class method, and we are getting the record out of it. So how we can do it? So we have this syntax at the rate wire we have to write, and then we have to write the get accounts. So this is coming from import. We need to import the module as well. So whatever name we have given over there, we need to write it here. And then this accounts is my choice. I can give it anything. And this is the standard format, which is the data and error. So let's jump on to VS Code and try to develop this thing, and we'll understand it better by that way. So I'll close everything. I'll create a new component for wire. Let's create new lightning web component, name it as wire decorator. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so in this scenario, our requirement is to fetch account records from Salesforce, right? So what we will do, we will use the wire service to fetch it, right? Wire, and we need to give it a name. So since we are using, we are calling the Apex class, we need to write the class as well. Right, so let's create a new component, create Apex class, and give it name as account controller, right? Okay, and in this account controller, we will write this method, give it name as get accounts, and we are not having any parameters here, right? And we will return the list of account, get ID from account. We will also return the, let's say, the name of the account. Okay, and now we need to call this get accounts from the wire service, right? So let's deploy it. Okay, so here we need to import that module. We need to write import, we need to give it any name, so we are giving it get accounts, and this name we need to use it inside this wire, right? Okay, and from, we need to write module as this one, suggestion that we are getting. Yeah, so we need to use this module Salesforce/Apex, then the class name, then the method name, right? And we are calling this method, so we need to, you can give any name here in place of get accounts, and that name you have to use it inside the wire, right? And then what we have to write is we have to give any name. So in our case, I'm giving accounts as the name, and we have to write data and error. Okay, so this is the standard format of writing wire when you want to fetch when we want to call the Apex method, right? And in this case, remember, we are not passing any parameters to the Apex method, because on the Apex method we don't have any parameters, right? So this is what we have seen here. call apex class to fetch records without any parameters, right? And if you see the syntax, we have the same syntax at the rate wire. Get accounts is the name which we have used in import, and accounts is any name you can give, your choice, and then data error and this one, right? So now if we get data, right, if we get any records from the apex class, it will get stored in the data. And if we don't get any record and if it fails, we have the error, right? Else if error, you can add this error in the console.log. You can give it name as error fetching accounts, and you can print the error. Right? And if data is there, let's store it into any property. Let's give the property name as account list, right? And we will add the value in the account list. This dot account list is equal to data whichever we'll receive from the apex class, right? Now if I deploy it, but before deploying we have to write on the HTML as well, because whatever data account records we are fetching, we need to store show it on the UI as well, right? So for this one we have to write template for each. So for each directive I have not covered yet, but you'll see it on the later part of the video. And why we need to use for each is because this is, we are getting the list of account, not only single account, we are getting list of account, right? So we need to loop all those account in order to show it on the UI, right? So for looping we need to use for each directive, right? On the for each we need to give it the list name. So in our case, what is the name of the property? Have the account list that we have used. If you see here, we given name as account list, right? So we need to use the same thing here. And then we have to give the, so this for item account is store the single item of the loop. So first item, then the second item, then the third item, and we need to show it on the UI, right? So how we will show it? We have to show it like account dot name. Why name? Because we are fetch from the controller what value we are getting. We are getting the ID and then we are getting the name of it, right? That's why we can use name here. And remember, when you are using for each directive, you need to add a key as well, right? For adding key we can write lightning card, and inside a lightning card we can add our thing, this one, and we need to pass one key. Key could be any unique value, account.id, because ID would be unique for any account, right? So this way we can write it. Okay, let's deploy it. Okay, so since we are using wire service here, we need to write wire here as well. Deploy it. Okay, account controller we might not have deployed. Account controller is now deployed. Let's deploy this LWC component. So whenever we are calling any Apex method, we need to write one decorator here as well on the controller, which is aura enabled cacheable is equal to true. Otherwise you won't able to call this method from the wire, right? So now deploy it. Okay, now let's deploy the wire component. Okay, it is now deployed successfully. Let's go on to the page, and we need to add that into the page. So for that we need to expose it to the Lightning app page. Okay, let's go to edit page. Search for the component wire decorator and add it in our page here. Click on save, go back. So here you can see we get the list of all the accounts from Salesforce, right? Whatever we have. So what we have done, we have called the Apex controller, Apex method from the LWC by using wire component, wire decorator, right? And this there is one more thing which I would like to show you. Here you can see you have used account.name, right? But if you give name it as small n, you won't able to see see the name of account in the web page. Okay, you are not able to see anything, and the reason why is because whenever we get we know that Apex is loosely typed, like you can write ID as capital or small, does not matter, right? But in JavaScript that is not the case. So how do you know like whether you have to write here small n or n? How do you know what data is coming from this Apex class into this JavaScript? For that you can do some debugging. For debugging you can write it like console.log, and you can give data to fetch data in which format it is coming. So if you directly write data, you won't able to see those perfectly because it is in JSON format. You have to stringify, meaning you need to change this to string, and then you can see the data in the console, right? And based on that you can write here what value you need to write. So I have deployed it. Let's load the page. Go to inspect, and if you go to console, so we have given name as data, right? You can see data here, or you can add it in the filter to find your console. Okay, so in data you can see this data is coming from the Apex class to the JavaScript file. So here you can see we have this account name for first account, then account name for other. So this is list, and here you can see the property name and is in capital. So based on this data only you need to write on the JavaScript in order to fetch it correctly. So if you write as n as small, it won't fetch it correctly on the UI, right? So based on that you have to do. So again let's recap. Account list will contain the list of, this is the list of all the accounts. We are iterating over it, right? And for one account it is storing in account name. We need to pass the key property attribute here whenever we are using for each directive, and this should be unique value. So in our case we have given account.id, and you can see account.id here as well, right? So it is accessible, and then we are showing on the UI as account.name. So this is the first demo, right? We have seen the syntax, we have used it. The other scenario is let's say you have the record ID on the JavaScript side, right? And you want to call the apex method again, but this time we need to pass the parameters as a record ID. So now what would be the syntax of wire when we need to pass anything to the apex method? So this is the basically the syntax. Here we have the record ID, we have hard coded it, but when you build any real project, we should not hard code. This should be dynamic value. Either you can use the @API record ID to fetch it from the URL, or from somewhere else you are fetching it dynamically, but for the purpose of this demo I have hard coded it. So we need to pass this record ID to the apex method which we have. So we'll see the syntax here, right? So @wire we need to use this get account details. Again, whatever name we are using on the import, we have to write this account ID would be the apex method parameter name. So you have created a account controller, right? You have created a method, and in that method you have given some parameter name. So that parameter name should come here, and this record ID is the one which we have on the JavaScript property, which is the record ID. And we have given this dollar symbol to make this property reactive. It means whenever the record is getting changed, this wire method will run again to fetch the latest data from the apex class. So that's why this $sign is mandatory, right? And then accounts, you can give any name here. This is your choice, and data and error like before, and you have your code written inside of it. So let's see this demo. Okay, so for this demo I will comment out all the code that we have written, and we'll start a fresh code here. I have commented everything. So this time we have a record ID. Okay, let's take any record ID from account object. Let's give this then what we have, we'll use wire. So this time we again need to write our in our apex class we again need to write one more method. This time we'll write as public static account get account detail, and here we'll give an ID which is equal to account ID. So we have written this parameter here, right? And we will return select ID name from account. Let's give it list of account. Okay, since we are passing ID, let's use the ID as well. Okay, where ID is equal to this one. So this will only fetch you one record here. I'll deploy it. Sorry, we need to add this as well so that we can use it in wire. Okay, so here we'll use again, we need to import that method as well. So you can give it any name. I am giving get account details from again Salesforce /apex /account controller get account method name which is get account detail. Right. So in the wire again we need to write paste this, and then here is the twist. So in previous case we are not passing anything to parameter, but in this case we need to pass, so we have to write a comma and then curly, inside the curly braces you have to give the same name of the parameter which we have on the Apex controller, right? And then colon, we have to, inside comma we need to give dollar symbol and the property which is the record ID to make it reactive, right? So what it does is we have given account ID, and the account ID value we are passing from JavaScript, which is this one, and this we are passing to the controller. So the controller will get record ID value here, right, as a parameter. And then again we can give any name to the here, count detail, and the same format like before, data error. Okay, so if we have data, we will add it into our account list. I'll save the same condition, and account list we need to define here because previous one I have commented out. Okay. Now refresh the page, go to LWC learning. Okay, now you can see only one account. Why only one account? Because we are passing the record ID which is for one account only, and Apex class is returning only one account ID because we are using condition where ID is equal to account ID. So it will obviously return only one record, and that record is getting stored in account list again, and we are using loop and showing it on the UI. So the same process. The difference is, in first case we did not pass any parameter, and in second case we are passing parameter, and we have different syntaxes for both of them. In first case you only use get accounts, whatever you have on the import. In other case you have to write this parameter name from Apex method and this property name which we want the parameter value to set, right? So this is the only difference. Okay, you can now again check the syntax to understand it a little more better way. Okay, so when we started wire, we have seen wire decorator is used to fetch data from Salesforce using Apex method. So Apex method we have seen, and now we need to check the LDS method, how we can use wire with LDS to fetch record from Salesforce. So the scenario third is how to fetch account using LDS. Before watching how to use wire with LDS, I want to show you something like what is LDS and how we can use this in LWC. So LDS provides multiple adapters to handle records efficiently. So these are some of the adapters which LDS provide, and these are used to fetch single record ID, fetch multiple record IDs and something. So we use LDS basically to avoid writing the Apex controller. In previous example, when you are fetching account record, you need to write account controller in order to fetch the account record. But with the help of LDS, you don't need to write Apex controller or account controller. You only need to add changes in the JavaScript file. So that is how LDS used, although it has some limitation as well, which we'll see in later video. And this LDS will cover everything in detail in my next video on the LWC learning series. So in this video we'll only see get record adapter. in order to show you how we can use wire with this LDS adapter, right? So let's go back to our example. So in this example, we need to fetch a account detail from the Salesforce, only one account detail based on the record ID. So we are going to use get record LDS adapter. So the limitation is obviously because it will only fetch single record, right? For multiple record, we have another adapter which is get records, which we'll see in the next video. So let's see how we can use it. Let's go back to our VS Code. So I'm again commenting out everything and write freshly. So for using LDS, we need to import, since we are using get record adapter, we need to import get record from LDS module. So for that we need to write from lightning UI record API, right? For using get records adapter, you need to write get records, right? You cannot give any name as per your choice here. We need to give the name of the adapter here only, right? So in our scenario, what we have to do is we need to fetch. Okay, let's see what scenario we have. Scenario is we need to fetch account name and source by using record ID. This is our scenario, right? How we can do it? We need to write wire adapter. We need to give name of the adapter which we are using, and then we have to pass two parameters here. First one is the record ID, right? Record ID, and the second one is the fields which we want to fetch. Remember, in this case we are not writing any Apex controller, so field value we have to give here only in the JavaScript. So for fetching field details, we need to import field as well. For importing field, you have to write import, and then you can give any name here. So let's give it account name field first from, and then you need to use this module Salesforce schema slash. You need to write object name, in our case account, and the name, API name of that field which you want to fetch, right? And you need to fetch the other field also, which is the account source field. Account source underscore field. So remember, this name you can give it anything, XYZ, ABC, anything, but we are giving some name which makes sense so that we can remember it at later point in time. But after from, you need to use the same pattern, Salesforce schema slash account name. If it is some custom object, you have to use the API name of that custom object. In our case, it is a standard account object, so API name is account only, and source, account source, API name is account source only, right? So we fetch these two fields because we want details of these two fields. If you want to detail of other field as well, you have to import it, right? So here record ID, we also have the record ID, this one. Let's hard code it for the purpose of this demo. Okay, so in the wire we need to first write the LDS adapter name, we need to give comma, and record ID we need to give the record ID property which we have in JavaScript, which is equal to this. And on the field we have to give all the fields which we want to fetch, right? So we want to fetch account name field. So remember, here I am putting value whatever we have here, right? If you have given XYZ, to fetch the name field, you need to write XYZ here. If you have given ABC here, you need to write ABC here, right? So we have given account name, that's why I written account name, and then comma and account source, right? And then again the same thing, you can give any name afterward, accounts, and then same format, error data comma error. If it's getting too big, you can put it in next line as well, it won't throw any error, right? So what we have done here, let's understand that. We have written wire get a record, we have written, which is the LDS adapter. Here we need to pass record ID and fields. In the record ID we have set value of the record ID, which we have dollar to make it reactive. On the field we have passed the import field name, which we have given to fetch name, and this is for account source, right? And now we have to write our logic here. So if I get any data, I'll store it in account detail data, else if error, right? And remember, in this case, since we are using get record adapter of LDS, we will only get a single record, right? And in this case we did not return any account apex controller, right? So this is different than the apex callout that we done before. So this way also we can get the records on Salesforce. So let's save it, and we also need to define this account detail. So let's define it. Let's go to HTML and see if we need to modify anything. So since we will only get one record, we don't need these many things, right? I'm commenting it out because get record adapter only gives us the single account detail, right? So I'm again writing template if true account detail okay. So what it is doing, if we have the value in the account detail, it will run the tags inside of it, right? So we need to write account detail dot fields dot name dot value. I'll tell you how I have written this one, right? First let me write it, account detail dot fields dot account source dot value. Let's deploy it to Salesforce and see what we have. So basically in this condition we fetch a count record with the help of record ID, and we are storing it into account details, and then we are showing it on the UI, the name and the account source, right? So first one is the account name, the second one is the account source, right? Now I'll tell you how I have written this one, right? So LDS has given us the data, right, and we are storing it into account detail, right? So what is the structure of this account detail? We don't know it, right? So for knowing it, you can do something like this. You can do console.log, the way we did for the other one. Let's give it name as data, and then again JSON.stringify.data, because the data is in JSON format, we'll be stringifying it, right? And if you want to deploy, and we need to deploy, okay. So now if I refresh the page, I'll go to inspect, go to console, and you can have the data. So this data is coming from LDS, right? And if you go to any JSON beautifier, let's open this one to see this in a better format. Paste your data here and beautify. Okay, so here you can see we get the details whatever we are getting from the LDS. So you can see we have the field, and inside the field you have name, and inside the name you have value. Inside the field you have account source, inside that you have value. So that's why on the UI component we have the account detail, which is the complete thing, right, which is the complete thing here. And then we have to go to fields, right, we have to go to fields, and inside field for the name we have to go on to name and then value, right. And for account source we have to go to again fields, account source dot value. So that's why we have written this as this format here, so that we get the value, right. So ultimately what we want to show on the UI, we need to show the value test4, and on the account source we need to show the web, right. So that's why the format is like this. So we have seen like how we can get one record by using LDS here. So that's how we seen like how to use LDS to fetch the account record. But the limitation of using get record LDS adapter is it will only fetch one record, right. Let's go back to our presentation, and here if I go to the next one, this is the syntax that we have used for fetching the account record by using LDS. We have used the get record, which is from the import, but in case of LDS this would be fixed because this is the name of the adapter. Then we have the record ID, it is also fixed, field is also fixed. You must have to use this one in case of adapter, in case of LDS. And this record ID is the property name which we are passing, right. This field name is coming again from the import, whatever name we have given in the import for the field name. And if you want to fetch multiple, you have to write comma and add the field name here. This account is your choice, you can give anything XYZ. This data and error is the standard format, and then you have to write your logic here. If you want to fetch multiple accounts using LDS, you have to use LDS adapter, which is called as get records. So we are not will not see the demo of it, but here is one of the example in which you can fetch multiple records by using LDS adapter. Here you can see we have passed multiple account IDs and then we are fetching it, right. So this we will see in our next video, where we will discuss LDS in more details and we'll see all the adapters of the LDS. Going on to the next slide, we have so the question is when to use LDS instead of Apex method. We have seen that we can use wire with Apex as well, LDS as well, and both are giving us the records from the Salesforce. So the question is when to use when do we use LDS, when do we call out Apex method. So this summary will provide you the idea. So if you want to fetch simple list view queries, you can use LDS. You don't need to write any Apex controller and then call it from by using wire adapter. So because simple list query, you can do it from LDS. No need to write any Apex class and call it from the wire service. That will reduce a lot of code in your system. So you can use LDS in that case. If no Apex is needed, obviously if you don't want to build any Apex class controller, so go with LDS. But if you want to query with complex filter, like let's say you have where account source not equal to this one, or there are multiple conditions after where clause, So that complex logic you cannot build in LDS, right? You need to go with Apex by calling Apex method only, because in Apex you can write any filter and you can implement any complex queries in Apex class, right? So in that case, go with the Apex method. In case of large data set, let's suppose you have too many number of records. So in that case, don't use LDS, because LDS has some limits. So go with the Apex class. Let's say you have 1,000, 50,000 record to fetch. So in that case, go with Apex class only. Don't use LDS. Okay, it's time to play some game, right? Game number 1. The question we have is, I just want to fetch a single record by using record ID, right? How can I achieve this? Whether we are going to use LDS or whether we are going to use Apex class. Think about it. The answer is use wire with LDS get record. Because why you need to write extra code, extra Apex method in order to fetch the details when you can do it with LDS, right? The second scenario we have is, I need to fetch records by query with complex filters, sorting. How can I achieve this? So in this case, since we have complex logic involved, we need to use wire with Apex call, right? Because complex logic we cannot build in the LDS. We need to implement the logic in the Apex method only. So in this case, we need to use this one. So this is it about LWC decorators. I hope you really liked it and understood everything. And if you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section, and I will definitely reply onto that one. And if you want to follow this LWC learning series, you can subscribe to my channel. You can check the playlist where you can see all the videos in this much detail explanation. I hope you have a good day and take care. Bye.